Hey, thank you for joining me on another podcast, YouTube video and podcast. You can watch it or listen to it either way for easy sales meetings. And sometimes I might even throw some of these over on my other podcast because I have some other things I'm doing. But I'm so excited to have my good friend Theresa Barnabei with us today from Tucson, Arizona. And a quick side note, Theresa and I are in a mastermind together. I'll kind of give you the backstory of that, but it was funny. Monday, we had our mastermind group, and Theresa's in Tucson, and I had a call right after our mastermind, immediately after that, with another person in Tucson. And I thought, that's kind of cool. I'm like, I'm going from one Zoom meeting in Tucson to another Zoom. So I Zoomed over and talked to another lady. She said, yeah, I'm only a couple of miles away from Theresa. She's a friend of Theresa's as well. But I'm so excited to have Theresa on. Thank you, Theresa. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
I have to tell you a quick story. At the RIA, Real Estate Educators Conference. Theresa and I are both members of RIA. A couple of years ago at the RIA conference, it was in Austin, Texas, I believe, you were leading a session, and I was like, where do I go? I was looking at, and I didn't know Theresa that well then. But I heard of her name because you're very well thought of in the educators community. And I saw your name and I thought, well, I've got to go to Theresa Barnabei's session because I know that name. So many people talk about her, and you rocked that session and talked about a bunch of cool technology tools to use in the course. So thank you for that. But we're going to talk about, I want to go back and let you tell the audience about however far back you want to go with your previous life, but you actually ran an office, was the manager of an office, pretty large office, and had some pretty large quotas. And so why don't you tell us first off about Theresa Barnabei and what brought you up and what got you in real estate? And then I'd love to share with the group about what managers can really do to grow their business. But we'll kind of go back and let you bring us up to the real estate sector.
To today? Yeah. Well, thank you for having me, by the way. I'm so grateful. I love learning from John Mayfield, by the way. Every time he speaks, I listen because I'm going to pick up a tidbit. So thank you for that, John. You've taught me a lot over the couple of years that I've been watching you. So thank you. So I come from corporate America. I had a 14-year career with United Parcel Service, and that's where I really learned what I call my business acumen and my business sense. All came from the UPS corporate America world. And after about 14 years, I decided I was going to do an early retirement. And so I came back to Tucson. At that time, I was working at the corporate office in Atlanta, Georgia. I came back to Tucson. I thought, wow, what do I want to be when I grow up? And I had already been investing in real estate. So it seemed to be like a perfect fit if I would just go to get my license. And I only went to get my license so that I could be a better investor. And then people started knowing that I had my license, and they started coming and asking me if I could help them buy and sell. And so the next thing I knew, I had this really, really lucrative sales career. And from my sales career, I was teaching, and then I was asked to be a sales manager, training brand new agents in the business. And then I became an associate manager, training the experienced agents, and then I took over the branch. So my branch was 150 agents, which is about as large as some companies are across the country. I had about 150 agents. My quota, and you mentioned this a couple of minutes ago, John, my office had to write $1.2 million in production every day of the year in order for me to meet budget and quotas. So
now that's 1.2 million in sales production every day. Wow.
Written business every day. So whether we were writing a listing agreement, whether we were writing a purchase contract, all of that had to equal 1.2 million a day. So my job, I felt as the branch manager, was to figure out how do I inspire the agents to do that much business on a daily basis. That means that like almost everybody had to write something every day. So to motivate or inspire that 150 agent office, that was, to me, was my full-time job. In there, that was a full-time job, but in there I recruited. And then, of course, we had to do the training. And then my job to get them to production was my retention tool. So I was always busy, constantly, but we made it work. And I was always the number 1 or number 2 most profitable branch in 14 branches of this company that was a part of home services. So I have a very lucrative real estate career. Now I run a school. I do coaching because I know what works in the sales function. I know it works in the management function. And so, yeah, I'm pretty embedded in real estate. It's pretty cool.
Very fascinating. And also for our listeners, one of the folks that's in our mastermind group with us, we meet every Monday. His name's Dan, and he is a raving fan of Theresa Barnabei, and he kind of followed a path. He came out of the military, he got his real estate license, but he really followed your coaching. I think he actually has hired you as a coach, but Dan talks about Theresa all the time, things that you that he learned from you and being a part of your coaching program. So walk us through, let's just say we have managers and brokers watching today.
Sure.
Who are thinking to themselves, okay, Theresa, I've got this team of 8 or a team of 25, and I want to just shake things up or, blow up the box and start over. Or how can where should I start to begin making my agents a little more accountable, or getting them to understand we have to do this much production for our business to succeed and survive? Where do we start with that? I mean, that's a great fact that you knew what your production was, and you had to get them motivated to go out and do that.
Yeah. So I used a really simple format, and I still use it today. I actually call it my framework for success whenever I'm in a leadership position. And the first one is that you always reward the behavior that you want. So if you have agents writing production, closing transactions, there's nothing more important as a retention tool than you reward the behavior that you want. The second part of the framework is all problems are resolved through recruiting. So if you don't, like if you're not meeting quota, recruit. And so that was number 2. Number 3 was provide the best training, so that people knew that whenever you spoke, there was going to be value. So they wanted to show up at their meetings. They wanted to show up at special training sessions. I never had to make anything mandatory. They just started learning over time that there was going to be value offered that really could make an impact in their business. And then the third part is my whole job was to retain. And the way I retained, this is a really simple formula inside the formula, is I took all of my agents, and it didn't matter how many or how small, but I took all of my agents and I put them in 4 quadrants. And so the top quadrant were the top producers in the office. Then the second were the ones who were the next. They were just below the rung, but those people are the hungry ones, right, John? They're right. The ones that are looking to the top producers and aspiring to be them. So they have a set of needs. And then 3, those were the people who had just broken out of the lower quadrant, fairly new in the industry, had dreams that they have not yet recognized. So those are my second quadrant people. And then the third quadrant people. My fourth quadrant people were those people who were like new to the industry, or they were experienced and they were just like tired in the business. They weren't really producing, but they didn't want to leave. And so I had a plan for every single rung of that quadrant. So the top producers, what do they want? They just want to be recognized. They want to be taken care of. And so I would do whatever I needed to do to recognize them, take care of them, congratulate them, and be there the minute they said, I need help, which wasn't that often. But when they did, man, I had to be available for them. The third quadrant, I just had to start teaching them what it takes to get in the top quadrant, right? That's all they want to know is, how do I get up there? I want to be in the top quadrant. Right. So their needs were a lot of training, a lot of one-on-one coaching, a lot of specific plans to get them to the next level of production. My third, I just had to keep them hungry. right? Because they know enough to be dangerous, but they don't know enough to be as successful as they can be. So I had to show them the realm of possibilities, and I had to keep them hungry and knowing confidently that they could do this. And then the fourth rung, I got to tell you, these people knew that they were either going to make it or they were going to be asked to leave. That's a hard quadrant to be in, but it's the truth, right? I mean, sometimes we keep people on our teams, we keep people in our brokerages that they're just not going to do it, and
Right.
we need to make business decisions as to what do we do now. So I would give them opportunities through training. And then if they didn't make it, they had their warning, and then I asked them to leave.
Yeah, and that's so important. It's interesting. My book that I co-authored with a friend of mine several years ago, Corky Hyatt, called 21 Mistakes Real Estate Brokers Make and How to Avoid Them, was really after I sold my company in 2006. I was driving to a realtor conference. I just sold my company, and I was driving along in the countryside, and I thought, man, if I could start over, what would I do differently? And so I thought, I think I'll write a book, 21 things I'll do differently the next time I open an office. But Theresa, the first thing I thought of was I would surround myself with good quality people. I had people on the bus. If we go back to that Jim Collins book, Good to Great,
Right.
I had people on the bus that really had no business being on the bus, or they had the wrong seat on the bus. You know, maybe some of them could have been much better if they had been on a team where they were gathering data or taking pictures or whatever. But I'm glad you brought that. I want to unpack, there were some great points there you mentioned, and one of them was reward the good behavior. Walk us through, or give us an example of how rewarding someone for good behavior. What's an example that we could use for that?
Okay, I have the perfect one, John. So, okay, I'm going to talk to the brokerages here for 1 second.
Okay.
Our brokerage, we keep the doors open because of net company dollar, right? Every dollar that comes into the branch and stays in the branch off of a agent's commission is how we keep the doors open, net company dollar from a transaction. So, there's a couple of ways to raise net company dollar, right? You raise your sales price, you raise your commission. Let's just stay with those two. And so I would work with agents, showing them how they could go into the next level of the average sales price, not just because of appreciation, but geo farming, target marketing, niche marketing. So that worked, but I realized that there was something a whole lot easier, and that was to teach the agents how to stand up for the value of their commission. And so we had a lot of training on what value do you bring to the table. Then right after we did the training on what value do you bring to the table, I started teaching them how they could go from reduced commissions to 7%. And
we know commissions are negotiable. So yeah,
they are negotiable.
Right,
They're not set by anybody.
Right.
So I was teaching them the value and how to present the value and how to ask for the commission commensurate with the value. And so I started a 7% club. And again, it's not fixed, but we can do things inside of our brokerage. We just can't do things with everybody.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So I started a 7% club.
And we want our listeners, they understand, just to know we're using this as a teaching aid. So
right. I'm not fixing commissions. So anybody that took a listing and they received an agreement from the seller to pay 7% or more, we just put their business card in a hat. And once a month at our sales meeting, and our sales meetings were very well attended. So if you don't have well-attended sales meetings, you've got to get John involved so that people will show up to your sales meetings. They're so critical, John. And so many people could learn stuff from you. Just one nugget will change somebody's business, because the nuggets I've gotten from you have changed my business.
Thank you.
I could go on about that, but I won't.
Thank you.
Let me finish my example. So when we first started doing it, there were only like 1 or 2 people in the business cards in the hat. And I started rewarding that behavior. They got a gift card to a really nice restaurant in town, and it was enough money to bring a friend or a partner or a spouse. And we make a big to-do about it. And then the next month we'd have more cards. And then we do a big to-do about it. And then the next month we had more cards. And there were more people getting higher commissions than they did before we started the program. I got to the point where eventually we were having about 30 some cards in the hat every single month. So people, the agents were excited because they were making more money. Net company dollar was greater. And I gotta tell you, I did not receive one complaint from a seller because they learned how to sell their value. And I just rewarded that behavior nonstop from the day I started that program to the day I retired from that position.
I love that. And I have to, I can't remember the Jim Rohn quote, but he talked about if you can show your value, I'm paraphrasing this,
Sure.
you could go, the sky was the limit on
Yes.
what you could make. And that's just what you were saying. And it's funny because, my company now charges a set fee. Yesterday, a kind of a difficult transaction that I was introduced to take as a listing. I still do some business with past clients and customers. Theresa, I did exactly what you said. I raised my commission to a higher fee because this man knows what I'm bringing to the table for him. And I explained to him that it was a more challenging project for me. And he said, not a problem whatsoever. And I think a lot of times we fail to remember that it's the value that we can connect with who we are and what we're bringing to the table. Consumers are, if they don't want to pay that, they don't have to. There's plenty of other companies they can go to who will charge a different rate. And we know fees are fine. I am working with another client just before this call. We were talking and I manage a property for him. And I could have gotten 2 bids for the air conditioning unit. And I told him, my client, I said, he's new to this area. And I said, excuse me, I said, I could go, I know several other heating and air conditioning people I could go to, but when I call this company in the middle of the summer and your client, who's a government agency with about 30 people working in the building, when they call me in July and the temperature's 105 and the air conditioner's gone out, that company will be right out there in 30 minutes for me and they'll have it fixed. And I can't guarantee the other companies. We might get a lower bid for a unit, but I can't guarantee they'll give us the service this company will. So he said, I get it. Let's go with that company. So
and if you think about that, John, that company, and I think we do it, we're just not conscious of it. And so when we become very conscious of it, man, we can change a lot of things. But that company is rewarding your behavior of calling them first.
Right.
Right? Because as long as you call us and you make us a priority, we'll make you a priority. That company is rewarding your behavior by showing up, by doing a great job, by not putting you on hold. And right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Think about it.
Any of us listening now, when we think about that concept that you just gave us, and you rewarded your agents for good behavior, and the behavior was, look, if you want to make more money, as a company, we're saying you can charge these rates. This is what we have, but you can get a better rate by bringing more value to the table. I remember my wife and I were fixing houses and flipping them long before the HSN or the shows were on TV. And Mr. Oath was our painter. And Mr. Oath painted for my mom and dad. I think he painted when I was a little kid. Great painter. I loved him. His son, Johnny, he and I went to school together. Johnny, if you happen to be watching this sometime, your dad was such a great painter. And And it was always kind of cool because Mr. Oath bought my mom and dad's Fiesta Cruiser station wagon that went on vacations, and my sister drove on top of the chat dump. So another long story, but Mr. Oath was expensive. And I kept trying to make a better profit on my houses, Theresa. And so I did a house, and I hired someone who was a lot less money than Mr. Oath. They did such a horrible job. My wife was almost in tears that I ended up calling Mr. Oath. He came over and fixed everything. And it taught me a valuable lesson. You get what you pay for. Exactly. Mr. Oath charged more than other painters, but you got a good quality, the best paint job you could ever ask for. Exactly. And so it's just that conversation. Now let's go back to recruiting.
Sure.
Why do brokers, we tell our agents they've got a list to exist, but why do brokers not recruit like they should? I mean, I have this new program with Easy Sales Meetings, which is all about recruiting. And I'm just dumbfounded when I go to brokers' websites and I see the lack of innovation or the lack of recruiting strategies built into the internet. I mean, you said it. Why should brokers, how do we change that or that mindset? Let's talk about recruiting.
So can we be really like blunt?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. So let's face it, most of us do not get into real estate because we think we are phenomenal salespeople. Most of us get into real estate because we think we can get financial freedom or time freedom, or sometimes both. And we get into this business because we like houses. There's a lot of different reasons why people get into real estate. Very rarely does anybody step up and say, I'm a great salesperson, I want to be in real estate. And so we have this feeling, and I know this because I coach so many agents, it's like, I don't want to be pushy. Okay, look, until we start shifting our mindset from I'm selling, I'm begging, I'm pleading, I'm hoping, I'm praying, to I'm servicing this buyer or this seller, and I'm the best person to do that, then our agents have a hard time selling, but not servicing. So I want to get on the agent level, because this is where we usually come in and go up the ladder to management or own a brokerage. So I want to start here. So this is the dilemma that we're in. So if we can make that shift as an agent, then we become much better as we move up the ladder. So now we get into the management, the leadership, the brokerage ownership, and we're like, I don't want to recruit. I don't want to sell. Agents don't want to be sold. And we haven't had the practice of selling. It's the same shift, John. We have to shift from, I'm not selling, begging, pleading, and praying that you'll come and work with me in my office. I have such a phenomenal office. I want to be able to offer it to you so that you can come and prosper here, right? And all of a sudden now I get out of the selling mode and I'm into the best place to be is here. Right. So I took my branch, and randomly I was at an office meeting and I had my notes. I'll show you. It was like this. I had my notes. I'm there reading down my notes, and every once in a while I have a sticker, post-it note, and it said Central was the best place to be. So I would be going down my notes and I'm like, well, of course we would do that here because Central is the best place to be. And then I'd go on to another topic, and I said, well, we're only going to do it at Central because Central is the best place to be. And so wouldn't you agree that this meeting was a great meeting, because after all, Central is the best place to be? And I started seeding that tagline, Central's the best place to be, Central's the best place to be. I believed that it was. I got the agents to start believing it. So when I was in a recruiting call, I had people begging to come into my office because they kept hearing that Central was the best place to be, Central was the best place to be. Well, then when I wanted to go recruit an experienced agent, they already kind of knew that Central was the best place to be. And so the attractor factor was huge. Mm-hmm. And then I got to select who I wanted to come into the office, but it was because I was giving them the opportunity to be a part of the best place to be. I didn't have to sell anybody. So I'm going to go back to the same value conversation we had with commission. When you as a broker owner or broker manager or a team leader start thinking about your office, your branch, your brokerage being the best place that these agents should be working at, you'll want to put the message out, but you got to know what makes it the best place to be.
Right.
And don't think you're selling. If you don't believe that your place is the best place to be, you got to figure out how to make it the best place to be so that you can be offering agents the opportunity to be a part of it. I'm servicing your business if you come to be a part of my brokerage.
Yeah. And I
That's
think
what
what I'm
utopia,
hearing,
Phil?
yeah. And I think what I'm hearing you say too is you have a care for that new agent or that existing agent, because if they come to where you're at, you're going to help get them to where the level they want to go to.
Right.
I love
Yeah.
that. That
So
kind
go
of,
get the best people and bring them to you. And you know, you get your agents involved in recruiting as well. But I want to address something that you just said, like you go to their website and you're like, why aren't you recruiting? That's got to be front and center. If recruiting cures all ails in the business, recruiting has got to be front and center. So, like, John, your white glove offering makes those brokerages front and center. Like, let's get the exposure that you deserve, that the agents deserve to know about, so that they can come be part of this phenomenal offering that you have. But if they don't know you have a phenomenal offering, you're actually doing them a disservice, because they can't come work for you. Because they don't know
exactly.
you're recruiting.
Exactly. Yeah.
I could go
Thank
on.
you. Thank you. And
But
I
I
want
won't.
our listeners also, if you haven't, go back and watch or listen to the podcast I did with Dr. J.J. Peterson, because he talks about how you can use story and story brand to tell your story for recruiting. And what Theresa just talked about, it all goes hand in hand and works so well together. So I just want to put that plug out there. I do want our listeners to know, I wanted to ask you another question on recruiting, but I want to jump to something else, because I think it segues very good. We're talking about the passion and the caring for the people. Theresa does a lot of coaching, and how we got together in our mastermind was I was taking a course she was teaching in Hawaii, because I offer a course in Hawaii and had to keep my instructor. I wanted to do that for the IDW, because that kind of fulfills some of the states where we're approved in, which is an instructor development workshop. And Theresa was talking about a mastermind in that group. And I wrote her and I said, are you in a mastermind? And she wrote me back and said, no, but I'd like to start one. And so we started a mastermind, and we brought in a husband and wife team. And we talk about our online marketing, of course, my real estate school and my easy sales meetings. But Theresa, you also do coaching. And I wanted you to talk about, it's for women, to talk about your coaching program, because I know we have some ladies who might be watching, and how that could make a difference. And I've seen what you have. It's phenomenal. And I think it really can help women, especially women brokers or women salespersons who need some help. But talk a little bit about your coaching program and how that developed, and what your goal is for those who subscribe.
Yeah, thank you, John, for that. So I believe, look, we all have our own thing, right? Women have what they have to deal with, men have to deal with what they have to deal with, and they're totally different. So this is a program written for women by women, obviously, and it really helps us uncover how we want to think, right? Because we are so, I always say we're put in society's box. You know, there's certain roles that everybody has to play, and women are set in a really specific paradigm that sometimes it's very difficult to break out of. And so we think that we have to work twice as hard as the men, or we have to do things differently as the men, or we have to be more demure than the man, or we can't be powerful business women. I mean, there's so many dynamics that go on there, John. And my goal is to assist women to uncover why we think the way we think, and it's all okay, just is what it is. But then what do we get to do with that? And how do we resurrect this person that we wanted to be, but we decided that we better put that person on the back burner for the dreams and goals of everybody else that we care for? And so the whole goal is to help women, especially midlife women, just start owning themselves and having the confidence to take time for themselves, having the confidence to earn their own money, having the confidence to spend their own money, and get their lives back on track with what they thought they wanted way back when, right? When we had dreams and aspirations,
Right.
we were out to save the world, and then all of a sudden it's like, no, you get in your place. And unconsciously, we've gotten our place. I think we all kind of do that to some degree. Women more so. And so it's all about just bringing yourselves back out again. And how does that feel? And, being authentically you without fear of being punished or persecuted or whatever else you think might be happening. Yeah.
Very good. And we'll have a link in the show notes. So if you're interested in that, go over there. You've got some free resources and things they can access, I guess. Yes. So would be great. And I just want everyone to know that the coaching you will get, I mean, I'm with Theresa every week on a Zoom call, but she inspires and motivates me. And I know that other women have also had this be such a help for them. And I'm telling you what, Dan Adler, who's in our group, and Dan's going to be on one of our calls because he's been a team leader, but Dan he goes back to so many things Theresa said to him during his sales real estate coaching that has helped him. So it's very cool. Well, one last item on brokerage. So we have brokers who are watching and listening, and thank you for staying with us this long. We appreciate it.
Sure.
Some of them are probably sitting there thinking, gosh, I'm a small broker, or I'm leading this big team, or I just feel like I'm kind of out of focus. And what would be where should they start to try to turn the ship around? If you're guiding the boat and it's your ship, what would be your first recommendation or a couple of recommendations to kind of get them pointed and going in the right direction?
I'm going to say this, and I don't want it to sound at all cliche-ish, but when you're leading people, I don't want to say it that way. Yeah, I'm going to say it that way. You have got to know their why. You've got to know what motivates them. No leader can motivate. We can only inspire, right? And our job is to find that internal motivation of why somebody's showing up on your team and spark that. Like, our job is to spark that as leaders. That's what I mean by the inspiration. Be the spark so that their internal motivation stays high. And the reason why I say internal motivation, because motivation, if you look at the root word, it is motive. And motive can only reside inside. There's no external motive. And so no external motivation will cause it to happen, but inspiration will cause motivation.
So is there
fire.
Yeah, I love that. Is there a activity or a survey, or knowing their why? Is that going to be more one-on-one conversations, do you think?
I think it's a conversation.
Yeah, I do
There's an
too.
exercise I take all the way across the country, and we do use it in our women's course. And it's what I call the drill down. And because I believe in that so much, and I have a psychology background, I just figured out, what does it take to get somebody out of their head and down, moving into their heart and their soul, because that's where the motivation lives. It's down here. It's not up here. But that's a one-on-one conversation, John, because that's a very personal conversation, and you have to be willing to have those conversations. Now, once you know what that inner spark is that you can feed every day as a leader, then how are you going to help them get what they want? Right. And at UPS, I learned the whole concept of reverse engineering way before reverse engineering was coined the way it is today. And that is, what's the goal? Let's work backwards. What do we need to do every single day, week, month, quarter to get you here? and have actionable plans that I can really help you get there. And that's, those aren't simple answers, but to me, those two things, that if you spent your whole career doing those two things, then you're going to know what behavior you want to reward. Yeah, I'll stop there.
No, I like that. And that I think that is so valuable and so meaningful and so good. Well, Theresa, this has been just an honor to have you on my podcast and to visit with you and to talk to brokers. And sometimes brokers and managers, I know it can be a lonely job and it can be stressful, but it can also be so rewarding. And I think what you just shared at the end there, if you know their why and you're helping them get to that, man, to me, there's no amount of money that can be as fulfilling as seeing that happen.
Yeah.
I remember going back to my live pre-license school days, and I was offering a pre-license class. And of course, I always want my agents to do well. And at that time, the college wanted me to teach my classes out there, and they gave me a room for free, and they were able to use the course as 3 hours credit on there. Nice. Anyway, I don't know how they worked all of it out, but I had a free college classroom. And I remember so many students, Theresa, who went through my school, passed the test, and came back to me and said, thank you. I found out that I didn't want to sell real estate, but what helped me by going back to your school is that kind of what you were talking about with women is I put something back on the shelf, but your school enabled me to give me the encouragement or the courage to go back to school to pursue one lady got her criminal justice degree and another lady went into nursing. And I just remember people who went on and did things that were so cool, but it's all because they took that step in. And that's really what you were saying is what's down there in that heart. And when we help
people find that courage that you're talking about, or find that confidence that you're talking about, it's almost like we help set them free.
Exactly.
Right. And the other thing I'd like to add that just popped into my head as you were talking, John, we don't have to do it all ourselves. And as broker owners or team leaders, sometimes we think we have to know it all, we have to do it all. It's okay to recognize what your strengths are. Like if you're not a person that is warm and fuzzy and can dig down in there, great. Hire somebody to have at your right-hand side that can do that. If you're not tech savvy, hire somebody who is. If you're not good at sales meetings, hire John because he is. You know what I'm saying? Like find the who that you need to offer the best place to be.
Thank you. And my next sales meeting, which I have to write this week, is going to be about discovering the you, I guess, discovering you. We're going to do a drill down. I like that. So I might need some help with that. But Theresa, thank you again. We will have Theresa's contact information down below. Check out our coaching program. For those of you ladies who are watching, I know you would just get so much out of it. And if you are a broker manager, Theresa would love to visit with you. She's a coach. Steve Chinook, who's on one of our previous podcasts, I asked Steve, I said, Steve, one piece of advice you could give any broker or manager out there that's listening and watching. And Steve, without missing a beat, said, oh, you got to hire a coach. He's like, all of my top RE/MAX offices, they have coaches. And I thought that is so cool. So call Theresa. She'll be glad to help you, or your agents if they need some help there as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Theresa.
You bet, John. Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody, for listening.
Bye.